All right, welcome everyone. Today we have one of our graduates, Scott Katzelnick, talking about landing a job in the tech industry without years experience. So thank you for being here and take it away.
All right, so just quick introductions to let you guys know who I am, where I work. My name is Scott Katzelnick. As Regina said, I am currently the lead full stack or lead developer for Braille Skateboarding. We are technically at this point a media company. We have a YouTube channel of about ranges from 5 to 6 million subscribers. We also have the technical branch that I oversee that handles our cross-platform mobile apps, our web app, our servers, our libraries, and some auxiliary products that we use, like subscription apps on our Shopify store and other things that run congruently next to our main products. I graduated from the Tech Academy in late 2020. It took me about 2 months using the alumni network at the end of my graduation to have an opportunity to get a job at Braille, and then it took about a month. I joke it was like a month-long interview pretty much, and I'll explain why. And then eventually, and that was in December, and then I eventually started in January officially as a full-time W-2 employee. I did start under the leadership of another developer, and I made my way to becoming lead developer after about 4 months of being at Braille. So before I went to the bootcamp, I was in management for about 10 years. I was a manager for Apple retail stores, for Microsoft stores, and right before the bootcamp, I was a manager at a large supermarket chain on the East Coast called ShopRite. I was their inventory control manager. So with my management experience and my newfound technical prowess at the time, I was able to land the lead spot at Braille. I currently am working on some really cool products. Like I said, we have a cross-platform app, and that's using the React Native framework. We have our web app using React and a lot of other cool technologies that are foundational and align with what the things that the Tech Academy are teaching, right? So JavaScript is one of the main languages you might learn if you go through the full stack route, something like that. So it was definitely cause and effect. I was able to get the opportunity at Braille because of the Tech Academy, and I don't have, educationally speaking, a normal background. I would be considered a non-traditional developer. I made a career switch from management to software development at around 30 years old, and I do not have a bachelor's degree at all. I do have about 90 credits worth of a chemistry Bachelor of Science degree before I became a software developer. While I was working in these management roles, I did have a desire to go into medicine. So I was studying chemistry. I started at Northeastern, came up in Boston, came back down here to New Jersey, continued my studies at Rutgers, and I ended up making a really tough decision. We'll talk about that later, but the decision involved me kind of leaving that behind, starting a new career, and the rest was history. So that's a little bit about me. I want to get into a couple of the topics that we're going to discuss today. So most people, I assume, here in the chat are either software developers or data scientists, more of an analytical group, right? So we would really value discussions and talks that are well laid out, well organized, and I do too. So we wanted to break this talk down into a couple main categories that I found to be the most important for landing jobs in the tech industry. Those are expectations as a software developer and what the expectations are in an industry setting, knowing what your greatest asset is, which is your time, and it takes a little bit of a mindset new paradigm for your mindset if you're not used to that. Your quality of work, your strive to make great things and to get them noticed, being able to model behaviors and brand and image yourself in a certain way based on those behaviors. The difference between making luck and getting lucky, and risk. Those are the main things that I have found over the last 2.5 years that have helped me get to where I am today, and to continually get job offers left and right on LinkedIn and all the other things. So let's start with expectations. So what does finding a job look like? What does a software developer in the field look like? A lot of people will look at job offerings and they'll immediately disqualify themselves, right? Because it'll say required bachelor's degree, or it may say 10 plus years experience, or even may say senior lead developer. And you go, well, I just graduated from a boot camp, so that I definitely can't apply to something like that. I will tell you from experience, from 99% of recruiters and from most hiring managers for companies, those are just general guidelines. Most companies, the technical hiring manager isn't the one writing the job description, the HR department is. So I always want you to keep in the back of your head that while some of those things might seem daunting or way off, or you may say to yourself, well, that's something I could apply to down the road, they're not hard and true. If they like you as a person, your communication skills, your ability to write good code to show that you are able to have the competencies that they're looking for, you may not only be, you may not only be eligible for that position, you might also be eligible for maybe a position a little bit less, but still a position nonetheless. And you never know when those things may happen. It's actually hard to find good candidates in the field. You have candidates that may lie on a resume, or they may embellish a little too much, or a lot of graduates from college that don't go to boot camps don't have a lot of coding experience in general. I mean, they might have a lot of foundational CS knowledge, but we automatically are coming out of a boot camp with a lot more, fingers to the keyboard screen time than a recent college grad will. And that's definitely an advantage and something to use in the field. You want to also make sure your expectations of time are set. Tech Academy explains it perfectly. Finding a full-time job is a full-time job. It really is. The more jobs you apply to, the better your chances of getting an offer will be. It doesn't hurt to apply to a job that you think is out of your league, so to speak, because the worst thing that can happen is nothing, and that can't hurt you in any way. You may be told not at this time, or we're looking for someone else, or you may get nothing in response, but that's okay. I don't want you guys to be too focused on the requirements on a resume. And the only reason I know you guys have heard this before, but the only reason that I really want to make it a sticking point is because I've applied to a lot of jobs in my history, and most of the time, the job requirements themselves, besides maybe the technical abilities, don't come up. I've never been asked, personally, do I think not having a college degree has hurt me? I've been spoken to about graduating from a tech academy and what a boot camp is like, kind of in this modern job market, but never the prior. So I would insist that you guys keep that in mind while you're looking for jobs. So time-wise is hard. You don't want to set hard and true times. It's an easy way to set a goal, but it's also an easy way to set yourself up for failure, right? It might take a couple of weeks if you're very lucky. It might take a year if you're a little unlucky. But the most important thing that you have to remember is you do have a lot more control over the process besides just luck being a factor. It's one factor, but it's not the main factor. But not focusing on time at all helped me on a daily occurrence be able to get through those days when you thought, this may never happen. Because it happens to a lot of us, if not most of us. We have instant imposter syndrome, right? Because you go through a boot camp, You start as a newbie in the boot camp. You graduate and you become a graduate of a boot camp. So you're at the highest level of a boot camp, and now all of a sudden you're at the lowest level of a job market. So it's a very dramatic shift from going from the beginning to the top and then going back to the beginning, where you know that the previous experience taught you a lot, but you have even more ahead of you to prove what you want to prove to other people. So I was actually on LinkedIn the other day, and there was a gentleman who graduated from the Tech Academy, and I didn't ask him if it was okay if I use his example, so I'm going to keep his name anonymous for now. But if you're on LinkedIn a lot and you are part of the Tech Academy network, you may have seen it. He was on LinkedIn constantly. He would always be mentioning that he's open to new opportunities. He's not stringent to one tech stack. I believe he even went for a course after he graduated to focus on a language that at the time, I don't know if we taught at the Tech Academy, Java. And he would always be on there. And I remember just thinking every time I saw him that he is an incredibly resilient person. You know, this was going on 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, 5 months. And it was around 9 months, and out of nowhere. So normally his posts are about new things that he learned or congratulating others, still congratulating others for getting jobs, no matter how much that may have hurt. But he came on one day at around 9 months, and it was his turn. And the whole time, people were telling him the same thing that everyone in the alumni network might tell you, and what I will tell you. If you keep persistent and you continue to do it, if you don't set expectations that you may fail with, if you are willing to keep going and pushing through, you will land a job in tech. It's almost guaranteed that you will be able to do it. Now, you may take another job in the meantime if you need to. Personally, I was working as an Uber and Lyft. I did them at the same time while I was going through the boot camp and for the 2 months after. But I knew it wasn't anything permanent. I knew it was to get by in the meantime. And I made sure that I reminded myself of that every day, that I will get this job no matter when it will be, whether it's today, tomorrow, or 5 months from now. And it will happen if you can continue to stick in there. So learning more than what a boot camp teaches you is also a very important expectation. So the boot camp is going to give you that foundational knowledge. It's going to give you the bare bones. I think the way Eric puts it is it's going to give you what you need to go into a job as a junior developer. However, I will tell you that if you want to have better opportunities, if you want to appear above the rest, you need to do stuff on your own. You need to make sure that you are looking at the industry trends and focusing on the most important things in the industry. You'll notice those because you'll be looking at job postings and you'll be seeing a lot of C#.net or a lot of React. This is currently what I see right now: Java, C#, React. Let's say you were an Angular developer or a Vue developer, and that's the only thing you focused on. You know, your chances will actually be lower than that of maybe a React developer. So it's having the kind of the job market IQ, understanding what's important and the things to focus on in your own study time, separate from the boot camp, separate from your work that you do at the boot camp. It's important that you have at least, you know, some familiarity with these things so you could talk to them in a interview. As a junior developer, you might not be expected to be able to build a product from the ground up in 2 weeks, but you might be expected to at least know about the technology, how it fits into the ecosystem that you're working with, and that you're building towards a better understanding of it, right? And then lastly, with expectations is I found it very important to get it into my head at the time that any experience in tech was better than nothing. You don't want to close a door unless you know what's behind it, because you really don't know truly what you may be missing or what connections you may make in the meantime, or how later in your career that may affect you. So I found it very, very important to take, if I had an opportunity and there was nothing else knocking at the door, to be able to take those opportunities. And remember, you could always upgrade. You could always, it's your path. You could always upgrade at any time if you need to. So don't be too picky coming out of the boot camp. And at the same time, realize that while you have your value and your worth, you also want to get that experience, because the experience is gold. The experience is what triggers daily recruiter in-mails in your LinkedIn. It triggers people seeing you as someone that is experienced in a certain field. It's what allows you to progress in the technology field. And once you have that experience, even if it's at the lowest levels, you have started the process. You have gotten in to the door. Now it's time to see what's past it, right? So going from expectations to your time, there was a mindset change, because I had worked in retail, right? Apple and Microsoft, these places are retail. So what you do is you trade your time normally in it as an hourly rate for a service. Something that changes when you become a software developer is your time now becomes your greatest asset. Your time is now your most valuable thing. The time that you spend not just programming, but doing research or conceptualizing architecture, solving a problem, even learning new material for a future job that you may have, is by far the most important thing that you offer. It dictates how much your skill is worth, and that's what dictates not just the job itself, but your ability to get the job. You're also valued much more than you think. So the software developer is a highly specialized role in a humongous field that is bringing us into the future. It is highly sought after, and it's something that not a lot of people on this planet can do. You know, before you were a software developer, when you were younger, maybe, if someone said to you they can build a website or they can build a program or an application, that seemed so cool, and it seemed like it might have been something that was very hard to do or very complex. And it is all those things, right? But you now have the skills to be able to do those things. And you need to make sure not to lose sight of that your time is your greatest asset. You have a very specialized skill. And because of that, your worth and your value to a company has gone up tremendously. There's a reason why software developers make almost on average 2 times more than the average salary in the United States. So that's really an important thing to have. Obviously, you don't want to maybe lead with that, right? You don't want to come across arrogant in any way or entitled, but it is something to know and to have for confidence building, that your asset is your greatest time. So speaking of time and using your time wisely, the next priority in this list was your work quality. Your work quality is, I would say, your second greatest asset behind your time. You know, your time actually is built on a foundation of your quality, right? So not only do you have the skills to be able to do certain tasks, how well are your skills compared to others? Now, it's important to know that when you're applying for a job, you're not just applying for that company against what they want. What you're really applying for is against your competition, the other developers that may be interviewing next to you. You want to make sure you set a bar, and the company will set a bar of what they believe they need. But most companies will not take no developers if they need one. They will take the best candidate that they find. And that's also something to realize, that this is something you have control over, right? Because you are going to a boot camp. You have the utilities and the resources to learn and to use your time wisely to make sure the things that you're learning are of highest relevance, whether that's to the job or in the industry in general. One way that you can show this, obviously, is with projects. You have your projects with the Tech Academy. So you want to make sure that you do great work. You want to make sure you set the highest standards. These are all things we know, but it really comes into play. And when one day it does get you a job, it's something that you've heard forever, but you have a realization that, wow, it actually did what it said it would do. So, quick story, the reason I was able to get a job at Braille is because of the work I did in one of my projects. I did one of my sprints using Python and Django. I was in the full stack program, and it was the first full program app, whatever you may call it, that I did from, MPX or I haven't done Python in a little bit. From initialization to Django admin, from initialization to completion. Besides all the homework assignments and the basic things that we were doing during your school, and I wanted to make it better than any of the other students. I never said that out loud, obviously, but in my head I said, my goal is to make this the best looking and the best functioning application that at that time I could make. So I worked relentlessly. I found I had an idea in my head. I said, well, I really like video games. It's something I'm passionate about. So I want to make a website based on video games, and I want to make it do something cool. I want to let you be able to search any video game that has ever existed, and any video games that you may want to get in the future or get more information about, store them to your account and be able to look them up, save them to a wish list of sorts, right? And I wanted to make it look like something very cool. I was looking at the other projects of the students as we were progressing through the sprint, and I was noticing that there wasn't a lot of time put into the styling, right? There wasn't as much time put in thought into the structure of the site. And I saw it as an area of opportunity. I said, this is a good time to learn how to be on a team. This is a good time to kind of flex my Python skills at the time, but it's also a time to get noticed. And what's going to get you noticed is the visual aspect and how well the site works. So those were the two things I worked on, was visually how it looked, and then making sure that the basics were working. So that means that I didn't want to do anything too complex. I didn't want to have crazy API calls that would take forever to return data. I didn't need any, I believe I used jQuery in my templates. I didn't want to run my templates. I didn't want to have any crazy logic that was going to take most of my time away from making sure the foundations were built out and visually it looked good. Now, I'm not an artist by any means, but there are a lot of people out there that are. So you can remember to use resources. We're not expected to just know these things off the bat. Research, just like we research, how to reverse a linked list. You could research how to make a website look good, or go look at websites that look good and use those as inspiration. You want to make sure that you have the confidence and awareness going into those projects that you'll be able to finish, of course, but you want to do your best, right? So because of all these things, after the boot camp, I got a call from the alumni network 2 months after, and they had said that the owner of Braille Skateboarding, Aaron Cairo, who was a personal friend of someone who worked at the Tech Academy, asked them for a developer. They were having problems with their app and they needed a developer. And I was one of a couple names that popped up. And my name was one of a couple names that popped up because I had built out this project that looked way better, personally speaking, than maybe any of my other sprint mates, right? And that was my goal. My goal was to, at that time, make sure I got noticed, make sure I made something great. have a higher standard than maybe the other people in your group. Be willing to invest in the long term and not make short term, to be able to make short term disadvantages for your long term advantages. It's something that served me well. I was setting myself up for future success, and it led to me having the opportunity to interview with Braille, and ultimately have the position. So the next thing in our list is striving to make things that get noticed. Now this kind of goes with your work quality, right? But there's another aspect to this. You know, you make this great thing, you put all this time and energy. Your time is your greatest asset. The quality of your work is, you have a very high quality or a very high standard for yourself. You want to make sure you're pushing these things out there into the ethos. You know, people are very busy. People are very ingrained in their own lives and their own positions and what's going on in their own lives. People aren't going to go out and say, oh, what did X do today? Or what did Y do today? You have to make sure you put yourself out there and that you're getting noticed. And a lot of those things are using social networks, of course. One of the most important that you can is LinkedIn. Modeling the best LinkedIn accounts, there's no shame in that. I mean, they work for a reason. It's a proven model. And it's something that is very important. One of the things that I noticed that a lot of people, I had looked at Facebook before it was Meta, Facebook, Google, Amazon. I would look at software developers at these companies and what their profiles look like, and I would model that. I would look carefully at how they structured their sentences and their description, what they would put as their bullet points for their past histories, down to the finest details. And I would model those things using my data, adding my personal touch, of course, but not striving too far from the path. And because of that, I was actually getting recruiter calls about a week or two after I graduated from the boot camp. Now, none of those things came to fruition in that time, but had I not gotten Braille, they very, very well may have. It was creating opportunity where there may have not been. And it was as simple as just getting the format of your LinkedIn profile right. You also want to be careful about things that you post. A lot of employers are people, so there will be inherent biases that people have. So once you graduate, I would highly suggest that you either refrain from certain things on your social media, or you have a personal account and a professional account. That could also be a good option as well. The personal account can be visible just to your friends, and the professional account can be visible to everybody. That's one way to go about it as well. But realize that it does exist. You'll never know if it had any impact on getting an offer, not getting an offer, being reached out to, and not being reached out to. But it is something that does exist in the industry, in any industry, to be honest. So it's something you want to make sure that you're well aware of. The other thing that you can do to make great things and get them noticed is, so I spoke about modeling maybe a LinkedIn account. Something that you can do professionally for your own quality of work in your code is model certain projects after there's very specific projects out there that will help you become better developers. What I would suggest doing is doing a little bit of research into great projects, not easy projects, hard projects. Make them hard on purpose. Probably things that you'll fail at or will be very hard to get through without going to Stack Overflow once an hour, right? But that's the point. The point is you want it to be a hard project because, one, it's impressive to the employer that you're showing it off to. Until you have an experience, your projects are everything for your experience. And employers want to know that you know what you're talking about. So working on the harder projects are going to benefit you much, much more than not. So what you do is you work on the hard project and you complete it. It doesn't have to be pretty, it doesn't have to be great, it just has to work. And then what you do is you then go to a repo or Geeks for Geeks or any one of these websites where you can find solutions or repositories, open source, GitLab, GitHub, anything like that. And then you look at what maybe a big company or a professional software developer would have done differently. And because you went through it yourself first, because you didn't go to the repo first, you will know how clever a solution may be. You will have a newfound understanding of how something works. Something will click that maybe it wouldn't have had you have just gone to the repo and to begin with and copy and pasted. It really helps you understand tough concepts like promises or async await or, God forbid, recursion a lot better once you have gone through it yourself and then sought out a solution versus the opposite. In the beginning, I was going out and I would say, well, I'm not expected to be good at this. Let me go see how a professional does it, and then let me try to replicate it. And I found I wasn't really grasping things quick enough that way. So I remember once I said, oh, what would be a really cool project? I was working on algorithms at the time. It's a cool algorithm project where you visually build out how an algorithm may sort, right? And instead of going out or watching a video and just copying everything they said, I did research. I used what I knew. I got as far as I could. I went on Stack Overflow. I went here. I went there. I figured it out myself. And then I went and I found a professional's version and I compared them. And I didn't even need to really compare them side by side because I had just gone through it. I knew exactly what they were doing differently, how much simpler and cleaner it was, why they were doing certain things. All of those things made sense, and I was able to pick up on a lot of the more complex nuance of the project, and it helped me learn my algorithms much better because of it. Speaking of going and checking on professionals' repos, the next thing you want to do is make sure you're modeling your behaviors. And this has to do with branding, right? It has to do with things we just spoke of. But it's not just your behaviors in interviews technically. It's also your behavior. It's also in your behavioral interviews. It's your communication skills. It's your ability to explain the value that you possess and to explain the things that will make you different and set you apart from the rest. And all the things that I've discussed up to this point are all fair game. Explaining how you feel your greatest asset is your time, how we're having the right expectations are one of the most important things that you can have as a developer for both the client and for the end user. Knowing that your work quality and striving for the best are of the utmost importance and expected in this role. Do you notice how all of these things as personal priorities align with talking points in your ability to speak to an interviewer and your job offer? Then it's not it's not by accident. It's because these things matter in the industry. So obviously we spoke about social media for managing your branding and being careful with your posts, right? But you want to make sure that you're constantly that you don't forget on the behavioral end, that you're not constantly working on just technical ability. You may not be the most technical in the room, but if you are very technical and you have great communication skills, that will put you over the edge compared to maybe a candidate who is incredibly gifted technically but can't work on a team. If you cannot work on a team, you can't work on a team, right? So you need to make sure that those things are taken care of as well. By the way, if you hear a baby crying in the back, we had our first son. He's 5 months old, so he's a little bit tired tonight. So I apologize. So the second to last thing I want to talk about is making luck and getting lucky and the difference between the two, right? So in the beginning, when I first got the chance to interview at Braille, I thought I was so lucky. I'm like, man, I am lucky. I don't know who else got this opportunity, but I lucked out only 2 months. That's not the worst I've heard. I've heard less. I've heard a month. I believe when I came out of the boot camp, I thought to myself, oh, a month would be great. That goes back to the beginning, setting the right expectations. When that ultimately didn't happen, I had kind of rethought my whole process, right? But I had thought in the beginning that I was lucky. But now that I've had about 2 years to think about it and go through some other experiences as well, I don't really think it was just pure luck, right? There is luck, absolutely. I got lucky that I made my career switch when I did, and went through the boot camp when I did, and graduated when I did, right? But had I not made my own luck by doing really well in that project, I would not have had the opportunity at all. So they work hand in hand, right? Everybody gets lucky sometimes, and sometimes you don't. But the thing that you control, making your luck, making the best, the best projects that you can, modeling your behaviors, all of the things that we've discussed, that is making your own luck. And realizing when an opportunity is coming in front of you. Not all opportunities are the exact opportunities we want, but being able to, be truthful with yourself, and remember and fall back on the things that will get you to where you one day want to be, like the fact that I mentioned earlier. Maybe take an opportunity that's not perfect. Maybe the title's not software developer, right? Like, I remember that first month, I'm not going to take anything that doesn't say software developer. I don't want to take customer engineer or solutions this, or I remember putting those artificial limitations on myself. And until I was ready to let go of those things, I didn't find that I had nearly the same amount of opportunities had I had otherwise. So you want to make sure that you're making your own luck, realizing that one day you will be lucky. And if you have been making your own luck up to this point, the opportunities will come before you. Remember, we all get them eventually. The last thing that I want to talk about is risk. Risk. So, so I made my career switch, like I said, in my early 30s. So this is the end of 2019, going into early 2020. I decided to join the Tech Academy, graduated in September. Got a call at the time. His name was Forrest. He worked on the alumni team. And Forrest had reached out to me one day randomly. He had been sending me emails every couple days. Here are 5 companies that are hiring. Check them out. Check this out, right? But I got a call from Forrest. I'm like, I got a call. Oh, we just had our check-in a couple days ago. I wonder what this could be. And he told me about Aaron Cairo, the owner, and the opportunity. But he told me there might be a little problem. He told me that they are using React and React Native. Now, at the time, the Tech Academy, the furthest they went was JavaScript for web, right? You learned HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And you did learn Python and Django and C#, .NET, and Entity Framework at the time. But there was no other framework besides Entity Framework that you really got into. You had to do it all on your own if you were going to do it. And I had not. I had not been researching it on my own at all. But when Forrest asked, he didn't ask me if I knew React. He asked me if I thought I would be comfortable doing an interview with React and React Native. And I followed one of my policies, one of the priorities. And I said to him, yeah, absolutely. Like, what's the worst thing that could have happened to me? And I bought a course on Udemy for like $11. And I went through it day and night, worked like 20-hour days if I had to. And the way that Braille ended up interviewing me is their app wasn't passing Apple and Google Play guidelines. When you have an app that requires a user account, your app also needs to allow user blocking. And they couldn't quite get the logic right. They couldn't do it in a way that the guidelines required. So it was upon me to learn React, to build out this blocking logic, and to get it approved by Christmas. And I mean, long story short, I was able to do it. It was the first true test as an engineer, and it's what got me my job. But it's it was the risk that I originally took in the making my own luck that got me there. It was there was luck involved, but I also made my own luck by doing all the things to get noticed, to be one of those few people that that they put up to the task in the first place. So taking risk is really important. Calculated risk, of course, but you want to make sure that you are taking some risks in your endeavors. Most good results come from those. All right, Regina, I think I'll open it up to questions if anybody has any.
All right, yeah, we have a few in there. Rick, did you have something to
We've
say?
got a good amount of questions in the chat, so do you want to go through those, Regina, real quick?
Yep. So first question, is there any common ground between web development and data science / AI? If yes, what should an aspirant focus upon?
Just repeat. It was a little broken up in the beginning. What was the first thing they were
Oh yeah,
comparing
so
against?
is there any common ground between web development and data science?
Well, we were kind of talking about it in the beginning, right? We were talking about data manipulation in general. So on a daily basis, you'll be doing different things, but I would say the common ground between the two would be being able to understand the type of data that you ultimately need to work with. You know, what are your most data is coming from API endpoints, right? It's coming from a server somewhere. So what are your payloads? What are they giving back to you? What are the methods? What are the resolvers that you need to either create from scratch or use that are also coming from the API that are going to allow you to do what you need to do as a data scientist or a web developer? It's important to understand that because a lot of code in practice is not using live API data, right? It's also something I would highly suggest whenever you create a project that you don't just create a POJO, right? A plain old JavaScript object, which is just storing data in a JSON object. I would suggest against that. It's really easy to do that just to test out your stuff. I would suggest going out and finding one of those open source API endpoints and using that in your code. It makes it much harder, but it is much more accurate. I was asked on an interview once to create a carousel using pure HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. But when you hit the next button, not just having the data, but making an API request on an endpoint and paginating through that API request. So these are things that are actively sought after. Now that was specific for web development, but on the data science side, I would tell you that your data is your bread and butter, and understanding the type of data that you're getting is the most important thing to you as well, because that's how you're going to know where to look for trends, for commonalities. You want to be able to analyze the data in ways that no one else is, and having a deep understanding of that data and how it can be manipulated to make an impact on the business that you're in is the most important. And that's true for both web development and data science. I would say that's probably the best common ground that exists.
Got it. All right, next question. What about landing a non-tech job for tech companies? I'm trying to move into project management and tech. I have PM experience, but not working from tech and having a hard time getting any responses on my applications.
Yeah, I would say it is a lot. It depends what you value in your current position, but I would tell you, if you have the opportunity to get into a company in a different position, it is a lot easier to transfer internally than to get something externally. There's a reason why external offers will always be higher than internal ones. So that is also something to keep in mind, right? Is, you know, what your offer may be as an external hire versus an internal transfer. But because it's easier to internally transfer, the company knows your worth. And this is all assuming that you will do a good job and you will, let's say, be up for promotion, right? You may still have to interview for this position, but it would be much easier to go from possibly a good track for a PM would be to a TPM, right? So from a product manager to a technical product manager, take over a technical team, and then work your way into an SDE role or a SWE or whatever company you may be in. And that'll show a clear progression from product manager to technical product manager into a technical role. The company most likely, well, they will take the best candidate hands down. And if you are the best candidate and they already know what your strengths are, they know that you're a person that has been with them. I think that would be the best way to go if you can't find anything else in the meantime. Absolutely, you don't want to close the door. You could always join as a PM and continue to look for a job as well. That's always an option. You don't have to stop looking for a technical job.
Great. Okay, but another question. So how do you get past the hiring / HR? So earlier you were mentioning like HR usually writes those description up. So how do you get past that? Because they have like 5 years of experience on there, and you don't even get the chance to like plead your case pretty much. So how do you get past that stage?
Sure. So the best way to apply to a job, hands down, is through through a referral, right? But very few of us, including myself, know people inside of companies. So the best way to do it, if you don't have anywhere near the requirements, I would tell you, is to create your network on LinkedIn. Possibly also other social media networks, but LinkedIn for sure. And when I say create your network, that doesn't mean going to Facebook recruiter and saying, hey, do you have any jobs available? I'm super ambitious. I could do X, Y, and Z, and I'm great, and here's why. The right way to create a network on LinkedIn is not to be a taker, but to be a giver. Say, hi, this is my name. I'm Scott. I just got into the tech field. Here's this really cool thing about Facebook that I learned. By the way, trying to reach out and increase my network and get to know all the really amazing people here on LinkedIn. And you want to build that actual relationship, right? You're not going to get a job offer, especially if you are under requirements, from somebody on a cold call, right, for lack of a better term, to a recruiter that can't spend more than 4 to 5 seconds on a single page resume in and of itself. It's not going to happen, right? But if you're giving rather than taking, using a little bit more time, it's something that you can build up over time. And before you know it, you have this network of recruiters, internal recruiters, external recruiters, and these recruiters know recruiters, and those recruiters know recruiters. It's like, it's like a tree, which is a data structure if you're familiar. So it's something that you could do to get past it. The other thing, my main point is you don't want to take them too seriously. If it really feels wrong to apply to a job, then don't apply to it. If you feel like it's a waste of time, don't waste your time. Focus more of your time on positions that you might find that are better. But if something strikes you as something that you feel like you could do and is worth it, but the requirements don't line up per se with what they're asking for, right? Maybe they're saying, junior to mid-level, 5 years of experience. Well, that's like the absolute max. That still means maybe 1 or 0 years experience, because they're not looking for a senior, but junior to mid-level. So these things are a little fluid. The other thing to do is reach out directly to the hiring manager or the sourcer for these companies and say, are these requirements hard and fast? Would you also being candid, right? Would you also be able to take somebody that went through a boot camp, a very stringent boot camp for these specific things? It doesn't hurt to take the time to ask if you feel the opportunity feels right for you.
Got it. Next question. What are your thoughts on Snowflake?
Snowflake?
Yes. I don't know if it's like popular data warehouse, possibly.
I have not used Snowflake professionally or personally on my own projects. If they want to rewrite their question real quick, just a brief description. But I have not used it personally, so I wouldn't have any personal thoughts on it.
Okay. Yeah, let us know in the chat. Clear that up a little bit, and then let's see. Sorry, I lost my spot. Okay, what if you know C++? Do you need to learn C# from scratch or move to advanced topics of C#?
So it's asking if you do know C++, should you learn C#? Is that what it's saying?
I think what they're asking, if like you know C++, do you have to just like start C# from scratch? Which I think yes, because there are different.
Yeah,
yes.
Very different languages. C++ is a low level language. C# is a high level language. So there are things in C++ you need to do that you would never need to do in a high level language. Memory management, garbage collection, things like that. The syntax is also very, very different. What I would suggest is, there are actually a lot of jobs out there that do like C++. There are a lot of jobs in robotics. There are a lot of jobs in automation, specifically back end. C++ is a very good skill to have if you feel confident in it. There aren't as many people with C++ knowledge out there as, let's say, C# or Java, because of the whole low level, high level thing. C# is something that's taught at a lot of boot camps. It's something that a lot of people are aware of because of Microsoft. C++, however, is a lot more specialized. Because C++ is more specialized, you will get paid more for those positions than if you were just C#.net as well.
Got it. Next question. Would you elaborate more on modeling the leaders? What would you do? Write articles, ? So I think what they're asking when you were talking about the LinkedIn section, basically like looking at someone else's profile. So can you elaborate on that and how you did that yourself?
Yeah, sure. So I went through and I found so I searched by company, right? I started with Apple, Facebook, a lot of the FANG companies, any of the other non-FANG companies that I thought were cool. And I went in and I networked. I requested to connect and I sent messages. I did decide to pay. It's about $30 a month. It's LinkedIn Premium. It gives you the ability to have something called InMail, which is what allows me to get all these recruiter contacting me. It allows me to talk directly to anyone in any industry, any field. And it also gives me LinkedIn Learning, which is a learning platform. It's actually very good. Their videos are very high quality, and you can get certifications that you can put on your LinkedIn profile if you pass the assessments. So I decided to pay for it. I felt like the $30 a month was valued at that point very high. Oh, it also gives you insights into job postings. How many people have applied, the things that the job offer is requiring or requesting, how many people have a degree, how many don't have a degree, all these really good insights. The pay range for a lot of the jobs as well will be shown to anyone with the LinkedIn Premium. So that was the first thing I did. So, you know, I am giving LinkedIn the money, but it is me investing in myself at the time. And I went to, because I had that access, I went to companies, found software developers, but not just junior software developers. I found software developers that would most likely be running interviews, right? So senior staff principal, technical program managers as well, hiring managers. And I would get into their networks, try to. Some will say no or not say anything, but a lot will actually say yes. And I looked at their profiles. Let's say in a 3-hour period, I would look at 10 profiles up and down, and I would pull out the commonalities. What are the most important things that I'm finding? And I would crunch that down and say, you know, this is the data that I've gotten from the correlation that I found amongst all of these. And I would also make sure to check cross company, right? So if somebody's working at Facebook, Apple, and Twitter, let's say, and I'm looking all at three different, maybe principal software developers. Did one write a long description? Did one write a short description? Are they putting technical details in the description? What are the type of words they're using in their description? Who are they actually talking to? Are they talking to everybody? Are they talking to possible offers? Are they talking to their own companies? So a lot of these things will tell you how to write and who to write to. The other thing I invested in that really made my content higher quality than a lot of people is Grammarly. Grammarly is a cool service that can run on your internet browser that fixes all of my horrible writing skills. And it has a lot of cool features, including tone, and it allows you to really fine tune the words in your head. Sometimes you're not able to get them on paper the way you want. Grammarly helps you with that. It takes input through feeling and thought and outputs words that you're writing, just maybe structured differently through those inputs. So it's a really cool product. I use it continually all the time. I use it in Slack to write to my own team. I use it obviously on LinkedIn, on my resume, in all the important places that I need to communicate well and effectively. It's also making me a better writer in general because I'm starting to learn sentence structure a little bit better. Having an ability to write clearly, concisely in shorter paragraphs is very important, especially when you have or you're responsible for creating a brief, right? A project brief, or talking to your direct about a new opportunity or a project that you want to do, or an issue within the company that you need to explain in detail. So I would also invest in Grammarly. It's helped me. It's one of the tools I use as well on a daily basis.
Yeah, Grammarly can definitely be helpful.
Great tool.
Let's see. Can you get a job with HTML, CSS, JavaScript while still learning React?
You can. It would be more of a junior position. It depends how well you are versed in those languages. I wouldn't call HTML a language. It's a markup language. Those languages, let's call them, those languages go a lot deeper than you think, right? There are industry professionals that work for Google and Amazon that only work with HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, no frameworks. You also don't want to make sure that you're locking yourself into a framework, because as you progress through your career, you'll realize that when you start getting to more intense interviewing, so the type of interviews where you're having phone screens and on-sites or virtual on-sites, a lot of the companies don't want you using React. Or if you do use React in one interview, another interview will require that you use pure JavaScript. So I would say before you start React, or before you get too deep into React, maybe, currently, as you're learning React, continue to deep dive into JavaScript. JavaScript is it goes much deeper than any bootcamp or anybody could really teach you, I would say, within 1 year. You need a lot of time with JavaScript to have an understanding of how it runs, what's the call stack, what recursion is actually doing, and understand, what hoisting is. So we all know JavaScript hoists functions, right? And not variables. Well, why does that happen? In an interview, if you say to the question, what is hoisting? Oh, it moves the functions to the top of the screen. That's going to look really bad if you say that. It's going to show that you don't have a true understanding of the call stack and how the V8 engine is actually parsing a JavaScript file. There are these great assets out there. You don't know JavaScript, and a couple great teachers on YouTube going through some of the harder things like closures, the call stack, recursion in general, and a lot of other things that on Node, which is the server side of JavaScript, that you wouldn't learn at the basic level. And having a really good understanding of those will really, really help you understanding React, not just because it's built as a JavaScript framework, but you have to realize, you'll learn the React way to do things very quickly, and you'll just as quickly forget how to do something in JavaScript, right? So if I asked you to create a static private method in JavaScript, could you do that? Is that something you would just know how to do? It seems like a simple task, but a lot of us don't think about creating object-oriented design in JavaScript. We think of it as a dynamic language that we use for quick methods and maybe dynamic programming. But how can you actually use the language natively, and how well you use it natively will directly reflect on how well of a React developer you could be one day. So if you do want to have an understanding of React, maybe for job opportunities, go for it. But I would not take the foot off the gas on native JavaScript. I think it will make you a much better developer overall.
Awesome. Sam has a question for you. So if Scott was put back into our shoes as a fresh developer just graduating from the Tech Academy, what would he do to continue working on his chops? What specific languages, IDs, etc.? What would he choose to learn? So on.
It depends. You don't want to overload yourself. So the first decision I would have to make is .NET Core, Java, or JavaScript, right? That would be, in my opinion, the first decision I would have to make. And let's say I went down JavaScript path, right? And I learned React in React Native. We'll focus on React first. That would be my first goal. But I would continue to do what I just told that user. I would, if I could go back and if I was in your shoes, I would get much better at native React earlier in my career. It'll save you a lot of time, make you a better developer, a better, a more well-spoken developer. Technically, you'll be able to understand the lingo better and what's actually happening. As far as job opportunities go, I wouldn't be as picky. I would apply to everything. I wouldn't even look at the years. I wouldn't. It doesn't matter. I would apply to everything. It's just a numbers game. At the end of the day, you don't really know what the hiring manager needs or wants. There might be more that meets the eye, and you're losing out on possible opportunities because you don't know what's there. Because it's a full-time job, you'll have the time if you treat it like that, and I would treat it like a full-time job, and I did, but I wouldn't be as picky. I probably could have applied to more companies during the day if I really wanted to, and that's something I probably would have done. And that will cut down the time it takes to get these jobs. Having these expectations, back when I was in your shoes would be great, knowing that, hey, I will get a job. It will happen if I stay persistent, if I continue to model my craft, if I continue to work on my communication skills and my ability to sell myself and value my time. I think those are the things that I would focus on if I was back in those shoes.
Any suggestions on finding internships when most of the intern co-ops are for students in college?
Right. Well, first things first, on your LinkedIn, don't put, so Tech Academy is education, but make sure that you are putting, if you're going through Prosper, the Prosper IT, make sure that is on your LinkedIn as your internship experience. Depending on how many sprints you do, if you do it, put it on there. It's fair game. It was an internship, more or less. You are working on projects for real customers. You are writing code that possibly will be merged into production. So it is fair game. As far as finding internships, obviously colleges have networks for internships, right? So those type of things you can't really push yourself into. But what I would do is I would continually go to the job boards of certain websites where you wanted to intern and you feel like you could realistically get an internship at, right? If you're going to go for a JavaScript if you're going to go for a software developer internship at Google, let's say, right? They most likely will only offer an internship to somebody that is studying in a CS degree. So if you don't have a CS degree and you don't plan to have a CS degree, maybe it's worth looking at companies that don't require or have such high standards. And the way to look at something like that is it's just something that I have to experience down the road. You know, you have to be willing and accept that there are certain positions and companies in this field that are harder to get into, whether you have a degree or no degree, and that's okay, right? The standard is higher. It will push you to become better. You want to be able to use that knowledge as fuel to a lot of bootcamp grads end up coming out of a bootcamp technically much more well off than a college grad. Not every, never say 100%, definitely, but something that I've noticed, you know, just through forums and talking to other developers and even some people at Braille and other companies, you know, the drive and the motivation and the gall it takes to go through this type of experience, to deal with this type of ambiguity, and then eventually to get the win and know that it was well deserved, that is like gas on a fire. Knowing that getting the job is just the beginning and not the end is also really important. But as far internships are rough because a lot of internships are geared, like you said, towards college students. If you can't find internships, I don't want the lack of internships to deter you from thinking that you can, how could I get a job if I can't even get an internship? In some cases, getting an internship might be harder because of the very stringent requirements over getting a job. So just realize that as well, and don't put too much stock in it. I don't think at the end of the day, it will be looked at too deeply. Realize that companies much rather you have experience than an internship. So if you could do something on Upwork or some other sort of website where you can get smaller jobs, possibly Shopify has an entire app store where you can create applications for merchants e-commerce store. There's a lot of places you can go and make money or get experience in the meantime, and it doesn't have to be through a standard internship experience. I would much rather have the work experience than an internship experience.
Great. I'm going to go through a few more questions just because we are a little over time. I love that you guys are putting all the questions in there. So I'm going to put my email in here, and you guys feel free to email me your questions, and I can direct them to Scott and answer them and then email you back, or I can put it on the meetup listing. There's like in the comment section. So yeah, just email me your questions if we don't get to it. But someone asked for any bootcamp suggestions. So actually, the Tech Academy, Scott actually graduated here. So if you want to say a little bit about your experience here, I know you kind of talked through it about during the talk, but.
So I joined back in 2020. At the time, it was for the full stack track. I learned Python, Django, HTML, CSS, JavaScript, C#, .NET, Entity Framework. Those were the main things. Of course, we also learned Git and some of the other tools. I worked on 2 projects at the end: the Django video game website and the C# at the time at Prosper. We were working on a C# website for a theater cinema. So I worked on that as well, and I had some code that made it to production, which was great. I valued my time at the Tech Academy, not just because I had taken this big risk and I knew that I needed to do well in order to make everything work and be okay, but realizing that your time has become your greatest asset, and it's more than just an opportunity to learn. It's an opportunity to start showing off what you have as a person, showing off some of those competencies. When I decided that I was going to make a better project than anyone else in my sprint, and then did, ultimately that decision helped me get the opportunity I got. But it was it was a wonderful experience. The teachers were great. I was getting constant feedback. The alumni program is amazing. Even if you do absolutely nothing when you graduate as far as job search, you technically still will be in a job search because you'll get email sent to you from the alumni network. I would highly suggest that you don't do nothing. Anything's possible, but don't count on it. Make sure you do the hard work, put in the time, utilize the resources that the Tech Academy gives you because they do work. Take advantage of every email you get from them. Apply to every single job you get from them. I don't care if it says phone technician. Just apply to it, right? Go for the interview. It can't hurt. The worst thing that could happen is you could say no. They could say no. You could work for a week and then end up leaving because now you're a software developer a week later. So, try not to, like I said, try not to close the door on an opportunity until you know what's behind it. And utilize all your resources that the Tech Academy has. They probably have even more resources now than they did back when I was in school. So use them.
Yeah, thanks for the shout out, Scott. And also I put our, if you're wondering what the alumni group channel is, here's a link to that. And like I said, I would love to sit here and answer, or I guess Scott will answer your questions, but I wish we could stay more. But so email me your questions. I will respond back. It is a holiday weekend, so it'll be next week. But thank you so much, Scott. I really appreciate it. That was an awesome talk. And then if you want to watch this recording back, we will be posting this later on our YouTube channel. And you can find it through our Tech Talk playlist. Here is the Tech Talk playlist. And then next week's talk is going to be actually like a hybrid situation again. So we're going to have one in person. If you're not able to join, you can definitely join it virtually. If you are interested in joining it in person, we will have snacks here. I know some people don't live in Oregon, so I wish you were able to join us. But if you live nearby, please come. And if you're not able to join us again, we will be hosting it virtually as well. And here is the link to that. But yeah, thank you guys for joining. Thanks again, Scott, and I hope everyone has a great evening.
Thank you, everybody. I appreciate it.
Yeah, great talk, Scott, and congratulations on your new edition. That's awesome.
Yes, congrats.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it. He's amazing. He's our first, so we're still learning. But
another future developer.
Oh God. Yeah, we'll see. All right.
All right.
Thank you, guys.
Scott.
I appreciate it.
Thank
Have a great 4th.
Yeah, you too. Have a good holiday, guys.
Bye-bye.